Welcome back to Lucore Automotive Services. Today, we're taking my 65 Buick Skylark GS to the dyno. But first, I have to put some new valve cover gaskets on it, because the ones that are on it are leaking. So let's get that done, and we'll head down to CIA Performance, strap this thing to a dyno, and see what she does. So this is my 1965 Buick GS. It is not actually a GS, it is a clone, but it's a very nicely done one. This car has quite a history, and I'll fill you in on that a little bit later. But right now, we're going to ID the heads. As I recall, when I looked at them originally, they were big port 430 heads. It's got a pretty stout cam in it, manual brakes, manual steering, radio delete, heater delete. It's basically just a stripped down car with a big old motor in it. We like that here. So let me pop these valve covers off, put some new ones on. $1382,985. Let's look that up. 1968 430. 69cc chamber. It's rowdy. Good to know. Hopefully it has the 430 rocker assemblies, because they apparently open at 1/6 to 1 as opposed to the other ones that are less. The guy that built this engine knew what he was doing. It's a very happy engine. It likes to party. And it's fun, a lot of fun to drive. So, I don't know. I got these new rubberized valve cover gaskets from TA Performance. We're going to try those out. They can't work any worse than the cork gaskets I've been using. And I'm tired of wiping oil up off my floor for my valve covers leaking. So, let's get those stuck on here.
As you see, we have made it to CIA Performance. Eric the Wizard is back there in the car, and we've got this thing strapped down, so we are going to give it a run. Now, a couple of things before we do this. We are using this as sort of comparison video to the for the Big Block Wars video we just recently did. Now obviously those motors were run without accessories and also on a engine dyno, not on a chassis dyno. So in this case, we do have to take into effect the fact that we're going to have accessory drive loss. We're also going to have drivetrain loss. So we're going to factor about 20% drivetrain loss with all of that figured out. So ideally what we're going to see is somewhere around 350 peak horsepower and 400 peak torque. Now it's going to be interesting to see what we get out of this thing, because we know not a lot about this. It also is going to be interesting to see where that power band actually is. It should be fun. Don't try this at home, kids. Alright, so there you go, runs are done. Now, let's talk about the important stuff. Did we learn anything that's useful against the Big Block Wars video? No, not really. Now, in all honesty, as we've all discussed, it's very, very difficult to compare chassis dyno numbers to engine dyno numbers. It's very difficult to compare chassis dyno numbers to chassis dyno numbers. They just, ideally you want to test the same car on the same dyno or different cars on the same dyno, so you have similar results. So with that said, no, this is not directly useful on giving us numbers for our Big Block Wars video. But we did learn a couple of things. As you can see with the video, we shot it down the throat of the carburetor and we were able to recognize some issues with that carburetor. It was bleeding the accelerator pump.
Yep.
Somewhere in the, what do you figure, 3,000, 4,000?
4,000, 4,500 RPM range. It started to actually push Excel pump fuel back into the rear section of the carburetor.
Right. So, in full honesty, this car has been as it is since like the mid-90s? Late 90s?
As far as I know, for the last 10 years, it sat in a barn. The guy drove it occasionally. Before that, the guy who built it in '97 is who put this car together. So, yeah, it's been in its current form for a really long time.
And it's been raced in this current form a lot.
Yeah, that's basically what the guy did with this. He took this car to GS Nationals and won his class in '97 with this car in its current setup.
Right.
So,
is it a perfect example of a 455 Buick? No, absolutely not. Do we have some opportunities? Yeah, absolutely. Has it
lived for 20 some odd years and produced a lot of power and still make smiles and giggles. Yeah. Now, I think the most interesting comparison with this would be something like with my Pontiac 455 before it was rebuilt, because it was a similar kind of setup with the upgraded bigger heads.
Yep.
A 455 that had been run and enjoyed, but it wasn't perfect. It did well, but it didn't do great. Now, we'll pull up the video when we get back to the shop and be able to compare the two between what we got out of that car and this car. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where those two made up and what they compare about. But anyway, so what did we end up getting? Total end up numbers were 308.87 horsepower at 4,999 RPMs. And max torque was 373.08 foot-pounds of torque at 38,700. At 38.7. So, interesting. It didn't make quite what we wanted to do ideally, but it's within the ball game. More interestingly was the no air filter mod. Rarely do you ever run around a vehicle without an air filter, full disclaimer. But this car actually picked up literally 20 horsepower between running no air filter and filtered, and 10 foot-pounds of torque. Which leads us to believe that that super fancy breather top, really nice air filter, maybe not necessarily doing us any favors.
And the air fuel curve is way better looking, like without even doing anything.
Yeah. No carb tuning, no nothing, just removing the air filter. You picked up 20 horsepower and 10 foot-pounds of torque, and your AFRs are way cleaner. So the green line is when it was running with the filter on. You see it dipping down and getting way rich. Whereas the red line is with no air cleaner on. So it is what it is. We're gonna say goodbye to Eric. We're gonna run back to the shop and pull up some more numbers so we can do some comparisons. So stay tuned. We're gonna get this thing unhooked and head back to our shop. Thanks, Eric. But once again, take care of us.
Have a great day, gentlemen.
Have a great day, man.
Always a good time.
Back to the shop.
Well, another good day at the dyno.
Yeah, dynos are always fun.
It's actually a lot more of a diagnostic tool than most people think. It's not just cool.
We learned a lot. We learned we have some fuel control issues. We learned we have an extremely restrictive air filter on it. We learned we have an ignition breakup that we need to resolve. And more than likely we could gain some more horsepower by putting better exhaust on it, because right now we're, was it 3 1/4 collectors into 2 1/2 inch pipes into ultra flow mufflers. So we can certainly gain a little bit of power on opening up the exhaust.
And realistically speaking, this car, when it was living at the track a lot, was probably running just collectors and done.
Just open collectors out the bottom of the car, more than likely. I mean, I'm real happy with the results we had today. It's healthy. I mean, we can compare it to the other car that was fresh.
Yeah.
Very similar setup. We don't know the cam specs of either one at this time, but I mean, realistically, for a 23-year-old engine that's been in a race car for that amount of time, and Lord only knows how many times it's been hammered on.
Right.
I mean, 308, what was it, 360 torque?
308, 373.
So 308 horse, 373 torque at the wheels. That's pretty respectable for something that hasn't been touched in literally in probably 20 years, at least 10 that I know of, because I didn't do anything to the carburetor to change it. It hasn't been, the jets haven't been changed for modern fuels,
Right.
which will give us a little bit. So yeah, there's quite a few things to address on it to make it a little better.
I mean, it's not in any way bad now. It runs fantastic. It sounds
no,
great.
it's a blast.
It's a blast to drive. It to me, it's kind of a testament to how well this thing was probably built the first time it was built, that it's taken that much of abuse for 20-something years, and it's still this strong. And we have previously run a 455 Buick that had freshly been rebuilt on that exact same engine dyno, or that exact same chassis dyno before, and the power numbers are not drastically different. Now, I don't want to show you the graph of that one, but because it'll kind of muddy the waters, but that car was a recently rebuilt 455, had a stage 1 set of heads on it, and it made, realistically speaking, peak torque power, it made 9 more foot-pounds of torque, and it's a $9,000 rebuild to be able to do that.
Right.
Now, it made power earlier, and it made power for longer, so it did make more horsepower. But you and I were talking off camera, that can be a function of a lot of things. That can be our fueling issue, that can be a cam that's either old technology or wiped out technology, or both old school technology and wiped out technology. It can be all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, timing change stretch could cause could cause a problem. And with as old as this engine is, it wouldn't surprise me if it needs a timing chain. We definitely have an ignition breakup. You could hear it popping on the, I think the second pull we did, we started to have popping out of the tailpipe. So we definitely had an ignition controlling problem. And again, the fueling is doing weird things because we're pulling fuel out of the secondary accelerator pumps, starting to drop fuel at higher RPM. So it's skewing our fuel regulation. So yeah, there's a lot of things to tweak. I mean, is it a healthy engine? Absolutely. Am I going to blow it apart to change it and rebuild it? No.
Right.
I'll fix the things on the top that I can fix, and the rest of it will just keep running because it's just a fun car as it is. I don't need more.
Well, and realistically, you get into a conversation of how much is it worth. I mean, we talked about in the Big Block Wars video, you know, is that extra 20 foot-pounds of torque that I got on that motor versus that Oldsmobile motor worth the extra couple of $1,000s that I spent on it? In this situation, is it worth this to gain 20 or 30 foot-pounds of torque and 20 or 30 horsepower on a $9,000 engine rebuild?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know, you know, I don't know what a stage 1 engine truly is. I'm not a Buick guy. I like Buick stuff, but I'm sure somebody will chime in the comments and give us some education on the stage 1 stuff and the differences. I know the 430 heads that are on this are commonly used to create more power than what the stock 455 stuff was, but I don't know how that compares to an actual stage 1 cylinder head. But I think I read they give like 5% extra power over the stock stuff, but then you've got the stage 1 stuff as well. But those were only 70 and 71 on the GS cars, so you're not going to find too many of those.
Right. And if you do find it, you're going to be paying a lot.
You'll be paying Buick tax.
Yeah. So, is it an apples to apples comparison of the Big Block Wars information that we got you?
Not at all.
Not at all. It's an apples to watermelons. They're both fruit, and they're both tasty, but they're not the same thing. So, take it for what it is. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Hopefully you enjoyed coming with us on our little Buick journey here. If you're interested in seeing more about this car, we do have some more driving footage of it on as a previous video that I will link here as well, when we were taking this one out, as well as with a Buick LeSabre wagon, which was also a very cool car we got to work with.
Yeah, we did the air ride on that one. That was cool. That's a cool car.
Very cool car. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you stick around for more. We will definitely be bringing you guys more content as quickly as we possibly can. Old school stuff, new school stuff, all kinds of stuff. So make sure you click on that subscribe button. Drop us a comment below if you think we're idiots, or if you want to ask us a question. Engage with us however you'd like. Please click on that like button since you're already here and you made it this far. We'll see you next time. Take it easy.
Have a great day.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Just